Alright, folks, we are now into part 3 of this as we go into the first half of the 2010s from 2010 all the way up to 2014. And now, since we are in the Best Picture expansion, there will be some years that we will be getting a little bit more shorter when it comes to these tier lists because now this is all we have left in terms of what movies we have. So we're kind of, I would say, maybe halfway there to the end of this retrospective, but of course, this one is going to be all in the first half of the 2010s. So we are going into 2010, and it looks like we've got 6 films here. So starting us up is Animal Kingdom, the Australian movie that got a supporting actress nomination for Jackie Weaver. And this is a movie I don't really remember it as much, and unlike some of the other films where they have memorable scenes, I don't remember a single scene in this movie. I have to give it an and yeah, it's not a bad movie, but yeah, it has to go in F. I just don't remember anything other than maybe just Jackie Weaver's Oscar nominated clip. I don't remember much about this movie in general. This is probably one of the most forgetful Oscar nominated movies of the 2010s. It's just this is just a big Australian movie and that was it. But if you want a better English movie that has more of an ensemble that actually works well, unlike an Australian movie where it has this ensemble but didn't work, here's a British movie that obviously did work well, and that is Mike Leigh's Another Year, which earned an original screenplay nomination. I am putting this one in A. Uh, the script from Mike Leigh is very fantastic, but more specifically, the phenomenal performance from Leslie Manville of what she does throughout the entire movie. As obviously we go through each of the 4 seasons of all this particular character, all the characters that are around with like Jim Broadbent's obviously in this one. I forgot who the rest were, but the entire ensemble is pretty great, especially Leslie Manville. Definitely would have been a great supporting actress nomination. She would, of course, get nominated a few years later for Phantom Thread for her first nomination. Yeah, the script, this is definitely a pretty good one. Mike Leigh definitely earned a good nomination here, and this is his latest Oscar nomination to date. Now into Beautiful from Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, which obviously earned an international feature nomination for Mexico, but more specifically, it earned a Best Actor nomination for Javier Bardem. I am giving this one a B. This is a very devastating movie of where our main character is coming from, especially when he gets diagnosed with prostate cancer, and then this is when his health really gets to a massive downfall. But he obviously really cares about like his little kids and stuff like that, especially his daughter, which obviously shows in a big Oscar-nominated clip that we've seen. It is a very unfortunate and devastating movie he has, but there are some scenes that are not really that memorable either. But it almost feels like it just like well, it's been a while, but Bardem does definitely do a great performance. So yeah, critics were kind of mixed with it, and I think the script might be one of the big reasons. But Bardem's performance, I think everyone does agree on, definitely a good Oscar acting nomination. Even though I do like it, and it's interesting that Inarritu's next 2 big major movies would become big Oscar hits with Birdman and The Revenant. And obviously he has another big movie coming up, I believe next year, starring Tom Cruise. Um, so that's definitely going to maybe be a big Oscar player. Although his last film, Bardo, False Chronicle of a Handful of Truths, didn't do anything. But I do think this was a pretty decent film and definitely a good nomination for Bardem's performance. Next up is Blue Valentine from Derek C. in France. And basically, the movie where you just have to watch by yourself. This is not a perfect date movie by any means, because this goes obviously on the massive downside. This is kind of going the breakup route or the sour relationship status between our main 2 characters, played by Michelle Williams and Ryan Gosling. Michelle Williams got a Best Actress nomination, but Odd Gosling didn't. I am putting this one. I'm gonna put this in A, but it would be like an A minus. Yeah, the whole story is just like very devastating. Where these 2 characters have 2 different directions where they're going. Where the obviously Gosling's going more on the obviously darker route, and as well as you can see with Williams wants to get away with it and everything like that with all the past events that had occurred, especially one infamous scene that obviously would probably really depending on how you feel about your views on it, but it just really is kind of shocking. Derek Cianfrance really kind of really took the script where he and his co-writers did. Cianfrance would actually get a few years later, 10 years later, would actually involve with the screenplay credit for Sound of Metal. But this is obviously a movie he did directed. But it's specifically the performances from Michelle Williams and especially Ryan Gosling, who definitely should have gotten a Best Actor nomination. Definitely, like the 2010s, he really had a lot of outstanding performances throughout his career, including obviously films that I have talked about like La La Land and Blade Runner 2049, and we even get to another movie for 2011 that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But yeah, Gosling was like this was kind of the beginning stage of him as an actor throughout the 2010s before he would get his second nomination for La La Land and after his first one for Half Nelson. Next up is Rabbit Hole, an adaptation of a famous play which earned Nicole Kidman a Best Actress nomination. Another very devastating movie about the parents' grief after they lost their 4-year-old son due to a teenager driving not so well. Not, I think, in a bad way, but this is specifically based on a play by David Lindsay Apparay, directed by John Cameron Mitchell, who directed Hedwig and the Angry Inch. So yeah, this is like a very interesting turn of events, starring Kidman, Aaron Eckhart, and a very young Miles Teller. I'm putting this one in S. This is a fantastic adaptation of the stage play into how it is turned into a movie. And it's specifically from the performances that really captivated for both Kidman and Aaron Eckhart. Eckhart was so overlooked that entire season. Like, he would have been my personal winner for Best Actor at 2010 since I had done my personal lineup from this decade. Yeah, he gave probably, I would say, maybe my favorite performance of 2010 in terms of just the Oscar nominated movies because he really goes into a different direction in a bit. While also you have Kidman scenes where she is also fantastic. Also would have been my pick for Best Actress and my number one for Best Actress of 2010. Like this would have been her. I think yeah, out of all her Oscar nominated performances, I think this is her best, my favorite one from her. And the way that she has to actually move on from it, and also with her scenes with Miles Teller of all the scenes they have, specifically when she wants to try the best way to apologize to him, and also the way to move on and try to get to know a little bit of them personally, while the husband's just kind of a little bit devastated and really also has a lot of situations as well, including I think selling their house, I believe, to prevent bad memories from him. It's been a while since I've seen this movie, and there goes again with me saying that. But yeah, if you have not seen this, I highly recommend you check this movie out. It is a very fantastic adaptation of this play adaptation to a movie. It's well acted, specifically from the performances that why you need to see this movie. And finally, for 2010, is Ben Affleck's The Town, which earned a supporting actor nomination for Germany winner, Afterglow nomination to be precise, after he starred in last year's Best Picture winner, The Hurt Locker. I am giving this one. I'm giving this a. Yeah, I will give it a D, but it would be a D minus. The heist seemed very, very interesting, but I just think the characters are just not that memorable. Not even like the supposed romance plot between Ben Affleck and Rebecca Hall's character, which I believe Rebecca Hall's is, I think, is also, I believe, a cop, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, it's just like the way how the dialogue just probably did not work well. I think I might be a hit or miss when it comes to Ben Affleck as a director with this, Gone Baby Gone, and Argo. Yeah, I'm just probably not a fan of Ben Affleck as a director, even though I've not seen like Live by Night from 2016 or Air. Um, but yeah, I think with just this film and with the other two films, yeah, I'm probably not a fan of Ben Affleck as a director. Now we're into 2011, where we had 9 nominees for Best Picture, and we had a couple of films that were in the rest of the 7 of the top 8 categories, a couple of them here to be precise. And we start this up with Albert Nobbs, which earned a Best Actress nomination for Glenn Close and a Supporting Actress nomination for Janet McTeer, where um, obviously Glenn is playing a woman who is kind of disguising herself as kind of like a man butler, so she can get a lot of profit or monies as well. And even Janet McTeer is also doing the same thing, because there was not a lot of women jobs. I am giving this one a D, but it would also be a like a D minus. Um, the story definitely seems very interesting, and there is some decent scenes that are in the movie, and I can see where Glenn Close is kind of going with her performance. And it definitely has a unique costume designing, production design setting, great makeup. The song "Lay Your Head Down," not that great in like a faster move, but I think it works better in a slower move. I would say. I don't know. It's like I keep mistaken with the slower version that I heard at the. I believe that's in the Golden Globes telecast they did showed, but I'm not really sure. But yeah, it stars both of those two, and even Mia Wasikowska after Alice in Wonderland and the Kids Are Alright. Not really a unique scene, but it's just the way how obviously our main character has to deal with the situation where she is going through. It seems interesting, but I think it's probably the story just kind of felt a bit bland, honestly. Next up is Beginners for Mike Mills, which earned a Best Supporting Actor win for Christopher Plummer. I am giving this one an E. This is just a very forgetful movie. Plummer's character, I just don't understand. Like, obviously he's playing like this gay father. Well, obviously after when he lost his wife, he now admits that he's gay, and I think he's also sick. I believe at the same time. There's just nothing I remembered other than that, I don't even remember like the main character and I think his romance plot, I believe. But that's just it. I just don't remember a single thing on this one either. It's just like I just only remember like Plummer, a bit of Plummer scenes, and I don't understand why he won supporting actor. I would have given that to. We'll actually get into that when we talk about one of our other nominated movies here. Now we're into A Better Life from Chris Weitz of the Weitz brothers, who he and his brother Paul were nominated with Peter Hedges in the adapted screenplay category for About a Boy. And this earned a Best Actor nomination for Damien Bashir after he got a SAG nomination for his performance. I am putting this one in B, but it would be like a B plus. I really do like this whole father-son story and the situation where the two of them had to go, but Bashir's performance really captivated it, as well as Jose Julian, who plays his son. That was also really well done. The script was pretty good. I think it's just that it kind of is a story that I think I've kind of seen, kind of similar to like other films, like maybe like Babel or Maria Full of Grace, for an example, where the subject obviously kind of really involves around the serious situation where it is going. But obviously, in their big search to finding their missing car, um, kind of really gets into the build up. But because of this immigration status, it's kind of like similar we've seen in so many other films of immigration issues, as I mentioned with the other two films I have talked about. Now we are coming into Bridesmaids from Paul Feig, which earned a Supporting Actress nomination for Melissa McCarthy and an Original Screenplay nomination for Annie Malumbo and Kristen Wiig. People were Some people are going to agree with me, some people are going to disagree, but it's going in F. Not double F tier, because I will admit there are some good things about Bridesmaids. Let's get that out of the way. The best things about Bridesmaids are easily Chris O'Dowd. He is fantastic in this movie. He definitely should have gotten a Best Supporting Actor nomination, and all of his scenes with him and Kristen Wiig are usually the best ones. And it did look nice. The cinematography really stood out to me, even though this is a comedy. But the cinematography was actually pretty great, honestly. It's kind of interesting that it's one of the few comedies that the cinematography does stand out. The rest of it, on the other hand, fuck no. I really can't stand this. My parents love this movie. I don't. I mean, oh gosh, there's a lot of these. I don't know if it's just the casting decision or what, but oh man. Like, there is a lot of comedian actresses that I don't like. And this is mainly probably because based on their appearance at the Oscars or award shows, to be precise. Like, I hate Maya Rudolph. I hate Rebel Wilson. Like when I saw them, they were in this movie. I immediately paused because it's just that like they were some of the worst presenters at the Oscars, and we're probably maybe expect Maya Rudolph to present at this upcoming year's Oscars because her husband might be taking maybe an Oscar, maybe for One Battle After Another. We'll see, but she's most likely going to be there next year because she's married to Paul Thomas Anderson. But yeah, like okay, she's not that bad in this film, I will state, but Rose Byrne's character is just awful. Is she is just a dick, to be precise. I don't think that was the best way to do it, but that's kind of the best way to say but another thing. But yeah, her character's just awful, and how you know what the whole sum up is basically obviously um, Rudolph's best friend, played by Kristen Wiig, was chosen to be the main bridesmaid that would give out the speech. But her best friend for college, played by Rose Byrne, is kind of jealous about this, so she tries to do her best to prevent Wig from doing the speech, so she can do it as her best. I think it's best maid, I believe, or best bridesmaid to be precise. And obviously things do not work out well, especially in the one scene where Wick just goes all at it and just kind of wrecks the party. So, not at the wedding, to be precise. This is before the wedding, but obviously what happens that what Byrne does that Wig wants to do is just, man, that's kind of, it's just like, yeah, the comedy is just not that great when we were just with the bridesmaid scenes. Obviously, the infamous scene, obviously when they are in the famous wedding gowns and they obviously have to deal with all the shits and vomits. Oh gosh. I hate that scene as well as the plane scene, and obviously one of the worst cameos ever. Melissa McCarthy's husband, Ben Falcone, plays this somewhat undercover cop that McCarthy's character tries to seduce in the plane. Oh gosh, that is like one of the worst cameos and one of the most dumbest decisions, I think. And obviously, I know Ben Falcon's been considered one of the worst directors currently today because of a lot of the bad movies he directed, especially starring his wife. Yeah, that's just one of the worst cameos. I just only would go back to any of the Chris O'Dowd scenes, and that's it. The rest of them, fuck them in my ass. Now is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo from David Fincher, his follow up to The Social Network. This is not a remake to the Swedish film, by the way. This is a different adaptation. It's just kind of coincidence they came out because obviously the source said in the movie they were not sourcing it from the original Swedish film. This earned a Best Actress nomination for Rudy Mara, and it's the last film to date to win film editing without getting a Best Picture nomination when Kirk Baxter and Angus Wall won this the previous year for The Social Network, and they won this again the following year. I am giving this one. I'm gonna give this an E, but it would be an E plus. The story definitely seemed interesting, but the performances and like the way how Fincher's style is just doesn't really work for me. This is kind of like I had the feeling a bit with The Social Network, how I felt bored with the movie when they had some decent performances. It's kind of almost like that, but it's the story seems interesting, but it's just the performances just did not work for me. I mean, like maybe the cinematography might be decent, but I think The Social Network looked a lot better than Dragon Tattoo, honestly. So I might give a chance to watch the Swedish film at some point, and I heard there was like a lot of sequels to it. So, but it was never nominated for the Oscars, and this is obviously not a remake, so I don't have the mind to at this time being. So maybe years down the road in the future, I'm not really sure. Next up is The Ides of March from George Clooney, based on the play Far Red North by Beau Willimon, who actually him along with Grant Heslov and Clooney were nominated in the adapted screenplay category. The same year, Clooney also starred in The Descendants, which got him a Best Actor nomination. And this is kind of more of a I would say a bit of a campaign, like a Democratic campaign presidential scandal involving like one of the people finding out a little bit about the head governor, played by Clooney, um, and the main person finding this out is obviously played by Ryan Gosling, and it's almost basically kind of like to prevent a massive big secret that's going on with this cast. I think led by Paul Giamatti, Evan Rachel Wood's in this movie. I am giving this one a B, but it would be a B minus. Um, but I actually really did enjoy this. I do have the Blu-ray of this film. It's just I think the script really is very very interesting in how it goes. I just think maybe the direction from Clooney is pretty good, but I think it's the performances that doesn't really stood out to me a bit. Like it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I don't even remember what Evan Rachel Wood was, unless she was a love interest to Gosling's character. I don't remember. Um, but I might have to like I think I have stated this with one of the other films here on in either part 1 or part 2 that I would have to go back and look at some clips to remember what I did liked about this movie since it's been a while. Speaking of kind of like head of authority in elections or something like that, or like presidential or prime minister subject movies, let's go into The Iron Lady, which won Meryl Streep her third Oscar for Best Actress and also one for makeup and hairstyling. Another kind of bland Weinstein Oscar bait movie that ended up winning. Yeah, this is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put this in F, but it would be an F plus because it's just very forgetful. I mean, I don't even remember much of Jim Broadbent as Margaret Thatcher's husband, or the rest of the cast members. Like, I forget who plays the not the prime minister. I think it's somebody else in the cast as well. Like, or I don't know in the royal family stuff like that because obviously this looks at the first women prime minister for England with Margaret Thatcher, who obviously led a big impact in the British government throughout during her time period. But it's just like I don't remember what Streep's performance was except for Oscar nominated clip and just the makeup transformation when we go into her scenes in the future. It, it's just like not a very great win, honestly. This is a win that has not aged well. There is somebody I think that would have should have gotten the Best Actress Oscar, not Viola Davis in The Help. If that would have won, I would not be surprised if Viola Davis would have taken her Oscar away from her. But because she now regrets doing that film. But that's not the one I would have chosen either. But yeah, I don't think this was just another. Weinstein was the reason why Streep won her third Oscar. Yeah, and it's very interesting. After the post, she has not been nominated since then. But we still got a few other films she got nominated later on that we'll talk about in this half, and at least one more in part 4. Next up is Margin Call, which from J.C. Chandor, which earned an original screenplay nomination. This is kind of more about the financial crisis and like the whole probably 24-hour period of Wall Street's investment banking throughout that financial crisis, kind of like an investigation. You have a cast like Kevin Spacey, now canceled, Germany Irons, Zachary Quinto, Paul Bettany, Stanley Tucci, Demi Moore, Simon Baker. Yeah, you have a big cast list here. Mary McDonald, but very, very forgetful. I am putting this one in E. It's just like I don't remember anything about this movie other than like Irons' like little Oscar clip that is used in the original screenplay moment. That's the only thing I remember about this. Nothing much from the rest of the cast or anything like that. Yeah, I don't understand this original screenplay nomination. It's just like, should I change it to? Yeah, I'm gonna have to put it at F because, but it would also be an F plus because it's just, yeah, it's just like I don't remember a single scene from this movie like The Iron Lady other than the Oscar clip. So sorry. Now we're into My Week with Marilyn, which earned a Best Actress nomination for Michelle Williams, a Supporting Actor nomination for Kenneth Branagh, and an actual movie legit produced by Harvey Weinstein. Yes, this is a few Harvey Weinstein movies during his time that he actually legit did produce, especially under the Weinstein Company, so I'm surprised they didn't went on the campaign on this film more so than The Artist, even though The Artist is a masterpiece. I forgot who the director was in this one, but he did a great job directing this one. I actually have to put this in S. And the thing about it is, this is a very unique telling the story of Colin Clark during his time during the filming of Laurence Olivier's film The Prince and the Showgirl, and obviously the massive connection, little relationship he has with him and Marilyn during this time, and just seeing the massive, like a very unknown depiction of Marilyn Monroe. This is not like the famous one that obviously everyone portrays her, but this is like almost showing the reality dark side of Marilyn Monroe, specifically of her health issues and all the drugs issues, and even with the relationships that she would have. It's just really just shows that a lot better portrayal than another movie that we'll get into part five, another Marilyn Monroe movie. But Michelle Williams, I think she should have gotten the Oscar for this. This should have been Michelle Williams' Oscar. I mean, she did a fantastic portrayal of Marilyn Monroe. I don't think no other actress could have done that more so than Michelle Williams. Excuse me. I know there was also that one that was in the movie Insignificance that I do have in the Criterion Collection. That was also pretty good as well, but I think Michelle Williams easily tops the best portrayal of Marilyn Monroe. Kenneth Branagh does a pretty good job as Laurence Olivier. He would have been my pick for supporting actor. Eddie Redmayne is really good in this movie. I know some people would like. I think some awards people were putting him supporting, but the story is also really about Colin Clark and all in his perspective, and we're going through his eyes of seeing how he sees Marilyn Monroe, a very innocent woman that almost feels like she doesn't want to do this entertainment thing, even though despite of her popularity, who she was. But just seeing almost the reality side, she just like feels like Colin wants to have her escape that and go into like a little bit of real world territory. Like there's an entire scene where they spend a day with each other. The one who plays the main butler that helps with Colin and Marilyn around his time is also pretty good. I forget which actor does it, but he was pretty good in his performance. But this just shows like what's going on, not really about the movie, but what's going on specifically with relationship status and even with personal life issues going on during the production of a movie, of like outside of it specifically. And it just really just shows how innocent Marilyn Monroe was in real life, and how another movie kind of portrays it. We'll talk about that, of course, in part five. But if you have not seen this film, I highly recommend you do so. Like, it just really just shows like how innocent Marilyn Monroe is as a human in general. Next up is our international feature winner of 2011, A Separation, the Iran film from Asghar Farhadi, which earned an original screenplay nomination. So we do get to talk about one of our international winners here in this category, other than well, then again, we Amelie and Pat Slapper did not win this, but this is definitely one of the winners that would get nominated in the top eight, other than the Barbarian Invasions. I am giving this one I'm gonna give it a B plus. Um, I really love this, like really like the story of how obviously it's not really about the divorce of the couple that we're seeing here, but it's also but specifically what's going on during that time period, like during this period of their staging of the divorcing style, with not just specifically more the perspective of the father, with all the situations of an accusation that he's been had with one of the maids, of almost accusing a maid of stealing their money, when obviously the wife took the money instead, as we saw, and obviously the situation where um, the daughter is also going through, because she's a teenager and she doesn't even know whether to stay home with his dad and also kind of follow obviously his her obviously her religion, of course, or move to the United States with her mother. And it just like you get specifically the perspective of the husband and the daughter throughout this movie, and Farhadi really tells the story while also a family member is going through a serious health problem as well. As you would even see in one of the Oscar nominated, I think it was in the Oscar nominated clip for original screenplay they showed, and but it's mainly specifically of the situation where our main husband, played by Peyton Menmadi, who is really great in this movie. He really did definitely showed a great performance in this film. But I really also love the ending where it doesn't tell you where the daughter's gonna go, because um, obviously all three of them were at the court, and obviously with the daughter obviously being a teenager, of course, and having a more of a smarter brain, of course, she has to make the decision whether or not she stays with her dad or goes with her mother. And obviously, she has this massive decision. And the last scene is we don't have an answer. As the last scene is that the judge ordered both parents to wait out in the courtroom while she makes the decision, and it goes in the credits with just them waiting out of the courtroom, obviously on opposite sides, across the hall. But it's just like that's just a really fantastic ending that you don't know where she made the decision, because obviously you have two parents that have both pros and massive cons as well. And especially, obviously, you can understand with a wife because obviously now, if the movie was made today, it would have more of a serious subject matter. Because with women's rights in that country, that has been really really getting a lot of massive controversy. Especially how when we would see that how it's portrayed in the movie The Seed of the Sacred Fig, and other movies where criticize the Iranian government. They didn't win. Farhadi did not obviously went to this route because this was like early 2010s, obviously. So we were not there yet. Um, Definitely a good Oscar-nominated movie. It would not have been my pick for international feature. We'll talk about that when we will get into the international feature tier list in the future. But definitely a good screenplay nomination, easily. Next up is Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy from Thomas Alfredson, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination and a Best Actor nomination for Gary Oldman on his first nomination of his career, adapting a Jean le Carre novel. And this mystery thriller thing, yeah, I'm gonna have to put this in E. It does kind of know where it's kind of going, especially when we figure out a bit of Colin Firth's character in this movie, but yeah, it's just like very, very bland, kind of boring. There's just really nothing to this movie for me. Not even Oldman's performance or Peter Strawn or the late Bridget O'Connor's writing is in this movie. Yeah, I just don't understand this. This almost could have gotten in for Best Picture, that or Bridesmaids, because it had that acting and screenplay nomination. But yeah, I would have not liked neither of the two to have been up for Best Picture, even though they probably would have been better candidates than Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, but no. Then we come into our last film for 2011, and like My Week with Marilyn, this would have been a great Best Picture nomination. A Warrior. We got another boxing movie here, by Gavin O'Connor, and stars Tom Hardy, Joe Edgerton, and Nick Nolte, which Nolte earned a Best Actor nomination, Supporting Actor nomination, excuse me, and his latest nomination to date. Um, I actually am gonna give this one an S. Man, it's just man, a lot of boxing movies, like even though boxing's not really a sport that would follow, but when it comes to boxing portrayal in movies, they're just really that good. Um, and obviously in this story, you follow two brothers who are battling it out for in boxing matches for a big prize, where Tom Hardy plays this ex-military personality, no, an ex-soldier, and he's kind of going back to the boxing industry, being trained by his father, I believe, played by Nolte. And he's kind of almost like a very dark person, like he can easily knock down somebody. And then Joe Edgerton plays the school teacher, which a lot of it, who also goes into this, but gets a little bit of trouble at the school for doing this act after the students kind of find out what he was doing. And even though the students really love it, but they really get into massive support with him. And throughout their journey, when they kind of even go into the little scenes when they're together but not being revealed much to the public, and I think even one, I believe, in a casino scene, unless that was Nolte with Hardy's character, I believe. But the whole build-up of them getting to the big match between the two, and when everyone found out that they were brothers fighting it out, it really goes into a unique aspect of family, and that really, really captivates me. Tom Hardy, Joe Edgerton definitely should have gotten Best Actor nominations. It definitely couldn't have gotten in for directing, film editing, especially. I think this would have been a better sports movie than Moneyball, honestly. This was really fantastic. Okay, next up is 2012. We got five movies here, so we're starting to get a little bit short, but we do got a little bit for 2014, as we see. So let's start this up with Robert Zemeckis' Flight, which earned a Best Actor nomination for Denzel Washington and an original screenplay nomination. I am giving this one, I'm gonna give this one an A minus. It would just be an A, but it would be A minus. This is one of the movies, one of the two movies here when we go throughout this entire retrospective of all the non Best Picture top 8 movies. This is one of the few movies here that told me why I should never drink. I never drink. I think the only time I ever had a taste of alcohol in my life was on the day when I turned 21, and it just didn't taste that good. I think maybe even I think a wine thing, I believe, as well. but that's it. I just can't. I just don't want to do this because drink or, and I just don't want to drink any alcohol or stuff like that because this movie showed me how in Betrayal why I should never drink. Other than another film, of course, from 2020. But yeah, this is definitely a great explanation of why you should never drink or even do drugs. Obviously, with John Goodman's character, what he does to Denzel's. But yeah, even though that's kind of more of a funny portrayal, I would say, even though it's more of a dramatic film, of course. Definitely a very underrated gem from Zemeckis, Robert Zemeckis, of course, especially that iconic plane crash in the beginning. Great use of visual effects right there, even though it's not really much, but that just really shows the Zemeckis' direction, how. And Denzel really gives a fantastic performance. He would have been my personal pick for Best Actor here instead of Daniel Day Lewis. He really captivated this famous airport pilot who was a drunken drug person, addict, and then obviously with the whole situation where he has to come from not just rehabilitation from drinking after the plane crash, but also to try to avoid getting persecuted for potentially uh, what there were some people that were unfortunately killed in the plane crash, like two or three people or something like that, including I think one of the what was it, one of the flight attendants. And obviously he wants to try to make his innocence, but obviously in the last scene where he tells that he was drunk when he was driving the plane. Yeah, that like drunk driving in a plane is 10 times worse than drunk driving in a car, and like even though they're both bad, but on a plane it's a lot worse. Yeah, the little romance plot that our Denzel's character has with this other girl who's also rehabilitating didn't really stood out to me. That could be a reason why it's an A minus. But yeah, this is a very underrated gem. John Gadens, who wrote the script, really definitely told us why you should never drink. And yeah, this is one of the few movies that told me I go immediately towards to and say why I never drink. Now we're into The Impossible from J.A. Bayona, who would later on direct films such as Society of the Snow. And this is obviously about the famous 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that occurred. And we go into the perspective of one of the survivors, Maria Belloni, and her family, which Maria Belloni is played by Naomi Watts. You also have Ewan McGregor and a very young Tom Holland as their eldest child, who plays their eldest son in the family. I think a mother of three sons. Lucas, who is Tom Holland's character, and we just follow like not just obviously the massive outcome that is occurring, but also the massive separation that all of them have with one another, where we see what happens. We follow more specifically with Mario and Lucas that managed to be together, and then we would find out that obviously Mario's husband and his two other sons were actually managed to actually be together still, and this obviously had them to massive situations, especially with Mario's leg. I think really had the massive consequences, and I think even maybe on one of her breast, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But ouch, that really had hurt because I think it was from a log that was on the tsunami, and this is a really devastating, obviously, survival story. But J.A. Bayona really directed the massiveness about this movie that he had to make sure that there's no offensive to this, and obviously how disastrous the actual thing is. Obviously, that would later come the impact when he does Society of the Snow a few years later. I am giving this one an S. A lot of the storytelling, the way how Bayona directs this, and some of the performances, especially Tom Holland. Tom Holland gave a fantastic performance, even when before he became Spider-Man. This was just a fantastic performance for him as a young kid at the time. Naomi Watts, she is good, but honestly, she's more supporting in The Impossible, I would say. Ewan McGregor is also pretty good, but I really love how it all comes together, especially when all five of them finally come together, and especially the situation Rio has with her health, especially when they finally get to a hospital where a lot of more people that were recovering from that tsunami were also there. It is a very unfortunate disaster. Even though there were a lot of people that unfortunately died, there were some miracles, and obviously Mario and her entire family of her story, and it's just really, really spot on. I really need to watch this movie again. But here's a movie I would probably might not want to watch again, and that is The Master from Paul Thomas Anderson, which earned 3 acting nominations for Joaquin Phoenix, Amy Adams, and the final nomination for Philip Seymour Hoffman. 2 years before he passed away from a year, 2 years before he passed away from, I believe, an overdose. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna have to give this one an E. I don't know what Hoffman's character is supposed to be. Some sort of like a religious thing. It's kind of like his performance is kind of reminding me a bit of Paul Dano's performance in There Will Be Blood, but it's less crazy because obviously Hoffman's character is more of a wife and is dealing with the crazy character played by Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know like what type of thing this movie's going on other than just like obviously they're trying to care for this man who is like I think used to do photography and then he's just kind of a bit of a crazy man in general. Like I know Joaquin Phoenix has a very is kind of maybe even crazy in sometimes a lot of his films and obviously a lot of characters he plays in a lot of movies. Of course, like obviously we kind of mentioned in Quills and then obviously in Joker and obviously you can even say Gladiator and even Napoleon. But yeah, it's just like I really don't know about this nomination. This is not one of my Paul Thomas Anderson go-tos ones. This is just not really my thing. Now we're into Wes Anderson's Moonrise Kingdom, which earned him and Roman Coppola an original screenplay nomination. I am putting this one in A, but it would also be an A minus. Um, child romance is something you don't usually see in a lot of movies nowadays, especially in acclaimed territory levels, and this is one of the most notable ones where you have one of this Boy Scout, and then you have this girl of a rich family, kind of escaping a bit and just really having a connection with this one Boy Scout. I believe is also an orphan, I believe, so he doesn't have a family. So and just having these two have a little romance, but not in obviously a way, but in the typical child romance, but in Wes Anderson comedic territory. Obviously, it just but obviously keep it subtle and not go too far really worked well. And then obviously the massive search and find between the two with both of the sides, especially with Tilda Swinton's character, who is basically almost wants to take the boy into the orphanage or something like that, or just like this evil antagonist, while Bruce Willis plays this cop and has this connection with the young boy specifically that we do follow. Yeah, Bruce Willis really is fantastic in this, and it is unfortunate where he is now, but if there would have been an Oscar nomination he would have gotten that is not Die Hard, it definitely would have been for Moonrise Kingdom. I think this was the closest thing I think he would have gotten. I believe he did got an Indie Spirit nomination for his performance. Yeah, he is fantastic. I think he is the MVP of the entire cast. Swinton's pretty good in her villainous role. The effects, especially some of the scenes, including the massive climax, I think the massive storm scene, I think it occurred, as well as a little bit of the flooding at the campgrounds. That's led by Edward Norton. Really, really unique movie. Um, it's I would go back to the Royal Tenenbaums a little bit more so than Moonrise Kingdom. Obviously, Grand Budapest Hotel is easily his best film, but this is definitely probably one of his most unique ones of going into a child romance story. And now finally we come in for 2012 is The Sessions, which is a biopic on the famous poetry Mark O'Brien, who spent most of his life who spent his childhood in polio and is specifically has always been sleeping with an iron lung. And during his final years, one of the things he really wants to do is to lose his virginity, courtesy of a surrogate. And he has a lot of questions about this as a famous poet himself, who doesn't even have a relationship. So obviously with this new priest coming in, played by William H Macy, and obviously the only way for him would be a sex surrogate played by Helen Hunt, which she earned a Best Supporting Actress nomination. John Hawkes plays Mark O'Brien. He didn't get a Best Actor nomination. Definitely wouldn't have gotten into it. I'm gonna put this one in A, but it would also be an A minus. The writing here is really, really good. I believe it is an adaptation of, I think one of Mark O'Brien's works. I believe. Yeah, on his I think it's based on his article on seeing a sex surrogate, and you just also understand of who Mark O'Brien was, even not knowing of like his famous poetry, but just like the situation he's dealing with, and obviously with his health, and obviously doing things that he really has to devote to, even as a Catholic person, I believe, since that's what I believe what it is. Um, and obviously, with the new priest coming in, played by William H. Macy, he has a lot of obviously difficulty things, especially when you have to deal with obviously with one of the amendments of not commit adultery. But you have to understand of like his health scenario and stuff like that, and maybe would never get married because of there could be a possibility he might die in this situation, and obviously, unfortunately, that's what happened to him in a little bit of his life. But like a lot of the situations, especially with Helen Hunt's character played by Cheryl, who is also really getting to know a little bit about the more about Mark, even when during these sexual lessons as the surrogate. But also is maybe with her relationship with Mark, also maybe being a bit of a consequence, maybe with the relationship with her husband. I'm glad that wasn't much of a big thing, of course, into the final movie. But the entire performance is really captivating. The writing from Ben Lewin, who is the director, I believe. Yeah, he's also the director. Really did a good job on this film. This is now our shortest one, year specifically at this time being, and maybe I would say for right now, 2013, where we only have 3 films to talk about here, because all the other films that were nominated in the top 8 were all the pitch nominees. So we start this up with August Osage County, which earned a nomination for Best Actress for Meryl Streep and Supporting Actress for Julia Roberts in her lead performance. I am putting this one in B. A lot of critics definitely felt mixed of it, but I actually ended up really liking this a lot. How the story was adapted into this play, and obviously with obviously this entire family coming in to support Streep's character because she just lost her husband while dealing with some sort of cancer, I believe. I think it's I think oral cancer, I believe that's what it is. And obviously then comes in big massive secrets that comes in a little bit more of the family's exposure that obviously Streep doesn't really care about, but the entire family, of course. Um, there is a lot of ups and downs with the sour relationships they have occurred, especially when Streep's character goes a little bit more insane, and Roberts really has to, I believe, as the eldest daughter, really has to demand everything about the relationship with her sisters and also with her mother, of course. Even though she really didn't felt like going back to like I believe it's a farmhouse they lived in, yeah, she Julia Roberts is really fantastic. Definitely, she is best actress at a lead in that film, and she would have been my winner for best actress, not being in supporting actress. So that's the thing. Chris Cooper is really fantastic in this. He definitely should have gotten supporting actor nomination. If he would have gotten another nomination after his win for adaptation, this definitely would have been it. And also stars a very young, not really too young, but Benedict Cumberbatch a year before he would become a little bit more bigger in the film industry. He was just only in Sherlock during that time, but this was kind of the first stage of his movie time a bit before he would start big in The Imitation Game the following year and then become Doctor Strange. Next up is Before Midnight, the final installment of the Before trilogy from Richard Linklater, which, like Before Sunset, earned an adapted screenplay nomination for Linklater, Delpy, and Hawke. Kim Krazan was not involved with the movie this time. I'm gonna have to give this because the thing is, I do find it is the weakest. Midnight is the weakest of the trilogy, and it does kind of go into a bit more of their sour part of the film, like kind of like, do they really want to be with each other or not after they have been officially together and have kids? And I think they're in somewhere in an island, I believe in Greece, I believe, or something like that. Um, during their trip, and it just doesn't seem like there's something wrong with the relationship, especially when they have a big, massive fight that goes on, and then obviously in the ending when they try to recreate their first time seeing each other, and it just kind of is not really a thing. I might have to give this probably a C, but it would be a C plus. Even though I do have the trilogy on the Blu-ray and the Criterion Collection, I think this might not would have been my pick. I think the performances are fine. I just think there was something that was not right. I don't think it was just the missing the one take aspect, or there was not much of a journey that they had went to for this film of him actually being legit loving them with them being in love with each other now officially together. And obviously the situation with Hawk's character, obviously because the first scene in the movie is them dropping off Hawk's son out of the airport, and I think that kind of like one of the beginning stages that they are together, but it's just I think there was something wrong with it because obviously this was also the Before Sunset and Midnight were also being made, as well as the Scanner Darkly, around the time when he was making Boyhood during that 12-year period. So I don't know if a bit of Boyhood's production kind of intervened a bit in Midnight, I would say, because Hawk also was probably doing that and the final year for Boyhood at that same time. So yeah, I think it's kind of a disappointment for me. Even though it's all right, I just think I would just stick with the first two, especially Sunrise. And finally, for 2013, Blue Jasmine, the last time the Oscars will ever recognize a Woody Allen movie, as was nominated for Original Screenplay, which gained him his final nomination, Supporting Actress for Sally Hawkins, and a Best Actress win for Kate Blanchett. Yeah, I don't know if she wants to keep her two Oscars or not. One, her first win was for a Weinstein movie, even though that was directed by Martin Scorsese, and the other a Woody Allen movie. I don't know how she feels about that. If she did one for Tar, she probably would have said that would have been her best one. I'm gonna have to give this an E. It didn't piss me off or anything like that. It's just that when Woody Allen does a dramatic movie like Match Point, that worked well. But when it comes to something like Blue Jasmine, where you're involved around like almost like not really drunk characters, no, that's more of Hawkins's character specifically. But when Blanchett's character comes to see her sister after a massive sour relationship with her husband, played by Alec Baldwin, and trying to find a massive secret that he's been having, um, like a scandal or something like that, and then I think Jasmine's Blanchett's name, and Jasmine's just really not having it, and she's dealing in situations not just with her relationships, but even with her sister, of course, and even when she visits her sister in the West Coast in California, she's just not having it. And obviously goes into all the backstories leading into the big event, but yeah, I just don't think that this would not been Blanchett's best. I think her win for The Aviator was much superior, excuse me, but I do think her best Oscar nomination is Elizabeth. Now we're into 2014, which many of you might know that was the year of film when the Oscars did their first year of announcing all of the nominees on nominations morning. So we begin this up with the first film since the Picture expansion to receive the Best Director nomination but not making the Picture lineup, Ben Miller's boxing biopic Foxcatcher, which earned Miller a directing nomination without the Picture lineup, a Best Actor nomination for Steve Carell, supporting actor for Mark Ruffalo, and original screenplay, along with a nomination for makeup and hairstyling. I am giving this one a B, but it would be a B plus. I would say Carell's presence as Jean Pierre Dupont, I believe. I think that's what the character's name, the real life person's name was. Oh my gosh! Not just with the makeup, but his performance and Ben Miller's direction makes the character's presence a bit scary, and it just really is really terrifying. But obviously, we follow, of course, with Mark, played by Channing Tatum, of how he ends up becoming this big iconic wrestler. That's what it is. It's not boxing; it's wrestling here. So I got a little confused. Um, if this was boxing, I think this would have been an A plus. But obviously, this is a biopic, of course. But yeah, getting to know where Mark wants to be and with between the relationship with his brother and obviously with this coach, that famous coach that would end up becoming not just obviously a successful coach for Mark, but also one of the most real life villains in portrayed in the movies of how his presence would be, especially at the end of the film. And well, the way how Ben Miller did this, and especially the writing from E. Max Fry and Ann Futterman. E. Max Fry did wrote Jonathan Demmy's Something Wild. So with him writing that movie, it obviously kind of reminds me a little bit of Something Wild, but it's a little bit more darker, of course. Some people did found it extremely cold, and I can see it why. Not because of the cold setting of the movie, but I can see it's a very, very dark and very slow movie. But I really did like this film. It's just like the whole suspense of it and the way how the sport is portrayed in this movie also really well done as well. Ruffalo, I think he's fine. I just didn't think he stood out. Not even Channing Tatum. I don't even remember much of Tatum. I know what Ruffalo obviously had with the beard he had. And it's very interesting. He has to call somebody Mark in this film when his real name is Mark, because I believe he played Dave. So yeah, Mark and Dave Schultz. That's what it is. But yeah, the relationships, like, it definitely worked well in the script, but I think Ruffalo and Tatum could have been better casting decisions. Like, not better acted, but I think they would have been better casting decisions instead of just the two. Speaking of suspense thrillers, I would say, let's go into David Fincher's Gone Girl, which really underperformed on Oscar nominations day, only earning a Best Actress nomination for Rosamund Pike. Not picture, not director for David Fincher, not adapted screenplay for Gillian Flynn, not film editing, original score, cinematography, or anything else. It only earned Pike the Best Actress nomination, or Ben Affleck for Best Actor, or even Neil Patrick Harris or Tyler Perry for Supporting Actor. Especially that was the year Neil Patrick Harris was hosting the ceremony. I am giving this one um, I am gonna give this one a B, but it would also be a B plus. This is I would say my second favorite David Fincher movie. That I've seen. My number one at the time being is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I've not seen Fight Club, so I can't really say. Um, yeah, the whole story of where Gillian Flynn go adapting the story of this husband trying to find his wife, but obviously his wife knows a bit of the secret about him, so she decides to play this little game of him thinking that okay, she's gonna play this role that she murdered, like this, framing her husband that she okay, framing her husband that she murdered her. Even though she's obviously playing this because she knows the big massive secrets, not just obviously that she wants to get pregnant, but also this little affair that Affleck's having with one of his students, and his sister kind of also knows a little bit about this. And obviously, this main police detective, if I forget who the actress plays, but obviously with the whole suspense that they're dealing with, especially how everything kind of goes into this massive build-up, what Rosamund Pike's characters want. We don't see her until like the second half of the movie, except for all the back scenes, and we see where she's at, and then obviously with her trying to find her, like the person that originally loved her, played by Neil Patrick Harris, who it's very odd to, that's a very odd casting choice, his not just because he's gay in real life, but more specifically, it's just a very odd casting choice. It's just his performance did not work in I almost said a Tyler Perry movie. I meant a David Fincher movie. Speaking of Tyler Perry, he's actually really good in this movie for his scenes as his lawyer. Like, obviously, with all the scenes of supporting Ben Affleck's character after seeing all this, what is supposed to be a parody of, I think, that Gracie personality that I forget what her name was that usually appears on the news. I know she appeared, I think, was in the one of the trials that occurred. I think a lot covered on GMA, where most of the time where she says, "I can't hear you" through the earpieces. I think that's supposed to be the massive portrayal. I forget who it was. I know which trial it was, but I forget which one. But I forget what her name was. But yeah, that's kind of like obviously satirizing, and Tyler Perry's character is kind of like telling her to almost like shut up and stuff like that. And then obviously Affleck had to hire this guy as his lawyer, and obviously it really came into fruition of his small scenes of almost defending it. And obviously the scene where Affleck's doing this TV interview telling that he misses his wife and he actually does love her, as we see from Pike's perspective in Neil Patrick Harris's house, and obviously the way how she does in the ending when she comes back, and obviously you know why, and obviously they know that they both made mistakes, and then they really have to kind of go and move on from it. So yeah, Pike definitely a good Best Actress nomination, but definitely could have gotten a lot more like adapted screenplay or something like that. Speaking of adapted screenplay, some people would ask why Whiplash is in that category and not original, but some people ask why is this nominated, especially people who hated this movie like Brian Rowe. Inherent Vice, Paul Thomas Anderson's like I would say kind of like 70s style hippie movie, that earned an adapted screenplay nomination for him, based on a novel from Thomas Pynchon. So this would not be the first time he would adapt the Thomas Pynchon novel. Of course, he would later do that with One Battle After Another. I am giving this one a B. It would be a B. I would say it would just be a B minus. Yeah, I think his writing here really did a pretty good job here of what he did, and Joaquin Phoenix is actually pretty great in this. I know we just mentioned, I think a bit in The Master, how crazy he would do in some scenes. I almost forgot about this film as well, because he did a fantastic performance. Josh Brolin kind of is. This is almost kind of reminding me of In Bruges now, but it's like in Bruges, but set in the 70s. That's kind of almost like the setting of it, even though this is an adapting from a famous novel. But that's just kind of like what it's given me. But I think Inherent Vice did a much better job, I would say. Although the difference is they're not working together. It's just like obviously I think Brolin's character is blackmailing. I think Joaquin's character, stuff like that. And it's interesting. We also get a little Walk the Line reunion between him and Reese Witherspoon in the scene. But I think what Phoenix's performance and the writing is done is pretty good. It's been a while since I've seen this movie, so it's just it was pretty good. But it's not like my favorite PTA movie. But I would probably go back to this more so than There Will Be Blood. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, are going to disagree with me in this, but this is like obviously I'm very hit or miss with PTA, but I would probably go to Punch Drunk Love more so than this film. Um, but yeah, the script I definitely do think that was a good nomination. Now into Disney's musical adaptation of Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods, I believe directed by Rob Marshall, or is it Bill Condon? No, it is Rob Marshall. It's kind of confusing when you combine Rob Marshall and Bill Condon together. That's just kind of interesting. Yeah, because this was the movie he had to do, and then would later do Mary Poppins Returns for Disney. So yeah, Rob Marshall directed this, and this earned a Best Supporting Actress nomination for Meryl Streep. And I think Jared Leto made a great joke when he was presenting supporting actress that it was some sort of California state law to nominate her every year. That was pretty funny. I think that joke has aged pretty well, even though obviously Streep has not been nominated since The Post. This would be her last supporting actress nomination to date, where she plays, of course, the chaotic witch. I'm putting this one in B as well. Um, I really love how the music is set in the setting of this. Obviously, the cast is pretty good in here, and yes, even James Corden's pretty good in this movie. Belinda's alright, but this would also be the first time she would understand Rob Marshall's filmmaking when obviously they would do Mary Poppins Returns. Streep, obviously, I can see where she is coming from at The Witch. Anna Kendrick is really fantastic as Cinderella here in this unique portrayal. I forget who the kid's name is, but I know he was in Les Miserables. He played Jack, and I forget the actress. She was starred in the Broadway musical revival of Annie, and she got the role as Red Riding Hood. Um, yeah, each of their stories. I know Johnny Depp played the wolf, but he was gone pretty much after I would say the first half hour. I would say because the main focus is on the main baker specifically, who is the main character of this entire ensemble movie, of where they have to find a way to get a child to avoid this curse from his father. Uh, uh, or specifically, yeah, that's when they wanted to have a baby to stop this evil curse that his father had did from, and the only way for the switch is to drink some sort of milk and get everything other throughout the entire thing. But in the world of fairy tales here, with the stories of Rapunzel, where the witch is specifically from, and then you of course have Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, and Jack and the Beanstalk, leading to this big, massive climax. I think it's Chris Pine, I believe, does this fantastic portrayal as the prince, especially in his scene when he's with the baker's wife. That was really good. But yeah, the climax really does well. The musical numbers are pretty good. I think my personal favorite number in the entire movie, in general, would be Your Fault, how it's portrayed in the movie. I think it may be because of the sound designs of where the stereo is, where you follow the characters, and depending on the angle they're in the screen, you hear from which direction it is, but depending on which format you're watching it from. But yeah, that might be I think Your Fault is probably the best one. In listening to the recent Broadway revival of that, it was fine. I think the reason I think it worked well in the movie because it was a little bit more of a slower pace, so you can understand what they're saying. So yeah, and just kind of goes into this big, massive pointing fingers to one another until they go into the witch's final scene. But yeah, I would have gone with Kendrick as the supporting actress choice for Into the Woods more so than Meryl Streep. But pretty good adaptation, but not great. But definitely one of the better modern musicals of the 2010s. Next up is The Judge, which earned Robert Duvall a Best Supporting Actor nomination, his last nomination to date, and one of the only 2010 movie roles Robert Downey Jr. starred in that is not Tony Stark. I am giving this one a B. This is a bit of an underrated film. I really love how Robert Downey Jr.'s character is Specifically, obviously, the biggest thing is to defend his father, of who is a famous judge, on some sort of massive incident that occurred for him, what he has done, and obviously is showing like the massive history that this judge has with this particular set of family, and obviously with our main character also having a sour relationship with his wife that is not really doing everything the best that she is doing as a wife, even though obviously Downey is obviously not really like not obviously what he's doing, but more specifically what she is doing that he does not like, especially for the care of their daughter. But this is obviously focusing on the main trial, and the whole trial setup is pretty good and well. And obviously, with the relationship they have with one another as a father and a son, including Duvall's Oscar-nominated clip, yeah, Downey Jr. is really fantastic. That would have been a good Best Actor nomination if Best Actor wasn't that very competitive, but that was there was a lot of snubs, of course, occurred in Best Actor, not just with David Oyelowo and Selma, but we'll get into the next big major one here in about a minute or so. But yeah, a pretty underrated gem. I would have not gotten in Best Picture. There are some scenes that are not necessary, but it is a pretty fine movie. So yeah, it's well acted, decently directed, kind of a bit of an underrated gem. All right, let's get into the fan favorite here, Nightcrawler, the directorial debut of Dan Gilroy, which got him an original screenplay nomination, but infamously missed Jake Gyllenhaal for Best Actor. I know Chris Stuckman was really upset about that, and that's when caused him done reacting to the Oscar nominations. This is going at A, not S, but definitely an A. I mean, holy shit, this movie is so intense. I mean, the way how that movie was shot was so particularly well done. I don't know why it did not get a cinematography nomination, but going into this crazy videographer played by Jake Gyllenhaal, going into exposing a lot of the crime scenes and showing it on television is just making the ratings just for this news station really well done. Of being this secretly filming crew going into massive places where they're not supposed to be in, and this massive producer played by Rene Russo, who's really fantastic. Would have been a great supporting actress nomination of going on, helping out with this intense videographer where he's going at, and not in a romantic relationship, but definitely a great co-working relationship specifically. But Gyllenhaal, oh my gosh, he is the real reason why this movie works so well. Other than Dan Gilroy's direction and the cinematography, I mean, how the hell did he not get nominated for Best Actor? He would have been a better nomination than made Benedict Cumberbatch, even though he's good in it. Definitely better than Michael Keaton, especially definitely better than Eddie Redmayne. I mean, he would have been a. This would have definitely would have aged well, and one of the biggest acting Oscar snubs of the 2010s. I mean, oh gosh, especially in the big revealment they doing the live one at the end. Oh wow. Oh gosh, that is just so intense, but really well done. Really suspense thriller from Dan Gilroy. Great job in his directorial debut. Now we come into Still Alice, which earned a Best Actress career win for Julianne Moore. Although this movie might have aged a little bit now today because there have now been a lot of more younger adults that have been unfortunately been getting diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's at a pretty young age. We just mentioned Bruce Willis when we were talking about Moonrise Kingdom. But the movie is just kind of a bland. It's just like Julianne Moore. She was trying to get an Oscar for this. There were some decent moments, scenes in it, but they were not that memorable. And Kristen Stewart does give a fine performance. Alec Baldwin is basically forgetful in this. I have to put this in E. It's just like this was just for Julianne Moore to get an Oscar. It just felt like that's what the movie was. I didn't like that she swept that entire season. I mean, there would have been a lot of better choices, honestly. I mean, it's just not that good. It definitely probably would have worked better if there was somebody else that was portrayed in this other than Julianne Moore or somebody else. But it's just like, yeah, obviously, yeah, it does make sense now. We've been seeing a lot of younger people now getting dementia diagnosis, unfortunately, and that's very sad that there's no legit cure ness for Alzheimer's or dementia. But there's got to be a lot more research to prevent more young people from getting this disease or fortunate illness that has been very unfortunate too, not just for adults but even in the entertainment industry. But obviously, if you want to like a good portrayal of Alzheimer's, I would say I would go with Away from Her more so than Still Alice or The Savages or even The Father. I think yeah, I would go back to this over The Savages for its portrayal of dementia, but Away from Her, I think, definitely had the best portrayal. I would even go back to The Father more so than Still Alice. Then we go into 2 Days, One Night, the Belgian movie that got Marion Cotillard a Best Actress nomination. But oddly enough, it was Belgium's submission for international feature, but it missed the Oscar shortlist. That was a very odd decision because it probably would have been the front runner. Like Still Alice, I think this movie is very forgetful. I do go back to Still Alice more so than this, but yeah, I'm gonna have to put this in E because I don't remember much of it because it's been a while since I've seen this movie as well. It's just basically her trying to make sure she still has her job or not, and I think that's it. I don't remember anything else from this movie other than that. I obviously did watch this, I believe, at the beginning of the decade because it did got a Criterion Collection release, but I just don't remember other than like Cotillard's in this movie, and obviously the directors do have a movie out this year called I believe Young Mothers, which is Belgium's submission for the international category. I'm recording this on November 28th, so we'll see if it does make in the short list in about a month or so, or in a few weeks. And finally, for 2014, and what would have been my pick for Best Actress, Wild. This is Jean-Marc Vallée's follow-up to Dallas Buyers Club, and I am giving this one an I'm gonna give this an A, but it would also be an A minus. Telling the story about this of Cheryl woman, I forget her. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but Reese Witherspoon did the fantastic portrayal of Cheryl of what she was going through. Obviously during this massive hike period she was going through throughout this kind of cross country journey, kind of like similar to what Into the Wild would be, but obviously they're both real stories. But Cheryl's still alive with us today. But obviously there were reasons why she left, especially with the loss of her mother, and also with a sour relationship she's been going through. So doing this road trip cross country journey is pretty memorable, I would say. But Witherspoon definitely would have been my personal pick for Best Actress. If she did not win for Walk the Line, I think she would have easily would have won for this over Julianne Moore, especially since it did got a supporting actress nomination for Laura Dern, which I don't remember much of her except for probably that one Oscar nominated clip of her in the kitchen, and that's it. Yeah, that's not a nomination I did not like. The adapted screenplay thing really should have been a thing, especially since it was written by Nick Hornby, who would write An Education and obviously Brooklyn, the film adaptations, of course. So yeah, this was definitely something I think was a missed opportunity for adapted, but Witherspoon really captivates the performance. It is unfortunate that Jean-Marc Valliere sadly took his own life, unfortunately. Um, but he did a really good job back to back movies with Dallas Buyers Club and Wild. Definitely would have been a great follow up to his. If he would have done a lot more in his filmography, but unfortunately, obviously, we know where he unfortunately took. But he really did a good job with the two films he had made, and Wild's definitely one film that I really do remember as well as Dallas Buyers Club.